Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. No. Let's try again. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Oh, that's a whole lot better. To the three gentlemen in the room, good morning. And a special welcome to you. And of course, a special welcome to everybody who is joining us online. It's almost spring, but more importantly, we're still in the month of women. And so this morning, I'd like to say a special welcome to the Sunday Times Dialogue. And this month, particularly focusing on Women on the Move in partnership with the Central Energy Fund, or CEF. My name is Nozipho Tshabalala. And it is an absolute privilege and an absolute honor to be serving you this morning as the moderator of potentially one of the most important and critical conversations we could be having as a country right now. We're gathered here in person, we're gathered online, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us online to have an intergenerational conversation. And it's a conversation that behooves us to ask the question, how do we empower the next generation of women in the energy sector? But you might also be asking yourselves, Nozi, there's just so many Women's Days events in the month of August. Why this conversation and why now? Well, the intent is very clear. As a country, we have identified a shared and collective imperative, and that is to move towards a sector that is built on cleaner energy sources, a sector that is more innovative, a sector that is more sustainable, but a sector that is also built on an increasingly inclusive and diverse range of stakeholders who can bring their expertise to bear so that we can actually realize this innovation, this sustainability, and more importantly, equity in the sector. The underlying provocation is that none of this will be possible at the exclusion of women. And so business as usual, we know, is not going to get us there. And the most strategic economic sector in our country might lie fully unrealized if we don't become increasingly intentional about pulling women in and making sure that they are not passive observers, but are active participants in the energy sector. So we've got a big job ahead of us in the next couple of hours. And that job is, how do we create a conversational space where we can have authentic and robust conversations about what does it practically, and I put emphasis on practically, empower women in this sector. Because we don't want to sit in the airy-fairy theoretical conversation that gets classified as another pink event. This is not a pink event. This is a strategic conversation of consequence for the country. And I really hope that we're all going to lean in and engage with that particular posture. I've got one ask of all of us today, just one ask, that you claim your share of voice. And what I mean by this is that in addition to the experts that we're going to be hearing from, who are going to bring their insights and their experiences, to hear your voice. So we're going to be very intentional about expanding the space, getting your questions, getting your comments. If you're online, we're going to really lean into you. I've got my cell phone, which I'm going to bring onto the stage shortly. The team is going to be mining your comments and your questions online and making sure that they're integrated into the conversation today. The last thing we want to do is to watch a conversation. We've here and we've set time aside so we can be a part of the conversation. The very last thing is that I'd like for us to use the hashtag Women in Energy across, women in plural, across all our social media platforms. And it's not just to share our beautiful outfits, which are there and I can see them, but it is for us to amplify the conversation outside of these four walls so we can bring visibility to the issues that will be raised here, and we can bring visibility to the insights and the solutions that will be surfaced in this conversation. So, again, if you're joining online, whether you're at the office or at home, hashtag Women in Energy. Our first order of the day is to invite our first speaker, who's just going to ground us. When I talk about grounding, it's about framing the conversation for us, giving us the context and setting the scene as to the significance of this conversation. And it's such an honor for me to invite a person who is not only the chairperson of CEF, but also is the founder and managing director of AN Duke Solutions. She comes into this space with over 25 years of experience in the energy sector, and prior to that has spent an incredible amount of time in the arena of business. She was also a group executive at Eskom, where she was looking after the distribution and customer services divisions. And if I stood here and read the rest of her bio, I think it would be lunchtime by the time that we're done. So for now, can we please put our hands together for Madame Ayanda Noah as she comes to set the scene for us? Just give her a very warm round of applause.
If I could just look at the statistics of where women are in energy today, 30 years after the new democracy, where are we? Let's look at the stats. I'm sure you've seen the numbers before. 22% in oil and gas, 32% in renewable energy, and yet 47% of women actually work. So I don't know when you went to school, colleagues, but I'm from an era where if you get less than 40%, you have failed. If you get less than 40%, you have failed. So with that, thank you very much, our program director, Nozipho, for that wonderful introduction. Very, very humbling, and good morning to all of us. All the gentlemen who are, I heard there's some gentlemen here. Where are the guys? Oh, there. Okay, hi, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. And I believe we also have some guests online, so good morning to all of them as well. Happy Women's Month. As you can see, this is the last week of the Women's Month, and of course, we are ushering in the Heritage Month. So one thing that I find very interesting with South Africa is that there is always a theme for each month, which is really, really, really great. But let's come back to this. This, for me, really, really is concerning. When you look at the population of South Africa, more than 51% are women. And yet, we are here 30 years after the new democracy. What does it mean? Have we failed? What are we doing as the women who have started the road already? So if I can maybe translate it to English, I don't know what it is, but it's kind of like a relay, you know? You take the baton and you pass it on. And what is important as well for us is that as we run our race, run it effectively, run it, you know, to your heart's desire, and really run it to the ability that you have been given by God. Run it. I mustn't come and grab and say, Manuela, give me your baton. It looks like you're not doing your job. Because sometimes that is what happens, eh? That is really what happens. So I have to start off just, you know, with appreciating how beautiful you are today. You really look beautiful. You know that. You look beautiful, stunning. And this is, and I know we'll probably talk about it a bit later on. This is an area where we sometimes get tripped up as women as we climb up the ladder. Because sometimes, you know, we get focused on, oh, you look beautiful. You look pretty, as if you can't do the work. Right? Now, I must tell you the story. I remember that when I was still working at Eskom, I used to go around the regions, you know, and interact with the general managers. And I remember one time, the Mpumalanga region was really, really, really struggling. So I would spend some time with them, ask them about their performance and all that. And they would say to me, you know, you are so hard. You are so hard with us. You really are very hard with us. And I would say, you know what? We work for customers, so we have to make sure that whatever it is that we do, the customer has to be happy. So with time over the years, Mpumalanga picked up in terms of performance. And one of the executives picked me up from the airport when I came to do one of my visits. And then he chirps to a colleague and says, hey, this lady, she doesn't even want us to tell her she's pretty, but look at how good she looks. And she doesn't want us to tell her that because she's always about performance. So, I think sometimes one is very sensitive about those things because it's very, very hard up there. And maybe that's why we end up with numbers like these, because it's hard. It's really hard. The guys look very good today. And I want to say this, that, sometimes you chirp about us, you stand in corners, you look us up and down, we do the same, if I can tell you. We do the same. When we scan her as ladies, we do the same. We look you up. You think you are the only ones who look us up. We look you up too. So please enjoy, and we're looking forward to the session today. So colleagues, if you'd recall, when we had this session last year, it was the first one that we had. And we really felt that, we need to do something as the CEF Group of companies around women and really uplifting women and talking about the energy issues and our representation in the sector. So we started it off and we said we really want to look at how we can power up the future. And of course, you'd recall last year it was a year of a lot of load shedding. In fact, if you recall those who were here, I spoke about the fact that I couldn't have a warm shower on the day because of the load shedding that was happening. Thank goodness Eskom is now getting their act together, at least now 150 days plus without load shedding, which is what they should. That's how our economy should be. It should be functioning. Energy is oxygen to our economy. If we don't get this energy into our economy, it dies. And we've seen it. We've seen businesses going out or dying because there's no energy. We've seen also that the economy is crippled. How many of you get so frustrated when driving around and you find so many traffic lights that do not work? The traffic lights don't work. And then you get the guys shame. They try and help and conduct the traffic, and then there's a whole host of arguments around the country. Should these guys be doing it? Should they not be doing it? And sometimes when you benefit from it, you actually realize that, they are helping. They are really helping. I know sometimes they cause a little bit of confusion. The other day, I was driving, and it was a four-way stop. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes from nowhere. And now I'm stopping because now all of a sudden he decides I'm going to conduct the traffic. He does. And then the guy behind me tells me, Bob, you must move. And I know it causes those confusions, but it's all around energy, the sector that all of us are in, or most of us at least. So it is really important that we look at the importance of this sector and how we can bring our own skills as women, the feminine side, the nurturing. We are birth mothers. We are mothers. We are birth givers, or how do you say it? But we give life. We give life to people, So it's really important for me that we bring all of those attributes into the space so that we can get the economy to work, so that we can get the jobs out there, so that we can get our country to function. We need to get this very, very high unemployment rate of 32%. It must come down. It really must come down. And so we're saying this year, we really want to build on that and say, going into the future, this is not a flash in the pan exercise that we did last year. It has to continue so that we can start teaching those who are coming behind us something about this economy, something about the industry, something about the country and how they can actually make a contribution. So I think it is really important that we make our own contribution as the community of the energy industry. We make our own contribution and stop complaining and saying, but these statistics look bad. Who must make them look good? Who's supposed to do something about them? And this is what we are good at as South Africans, by the way. We sit back and say, government must do this. and government must do that. You know, at the end of the day, all of us go to the university of life, whether you like it or not. You might not have a degree from the university, but you will get one from the university of life. From the day that you are born, you get into the university of life, your experiences, and how you actually leverage the resources that are at your disposal so that you can make a contribution. So we really want to look at how we can empower the future. How can we get these numbers to improve going into the next cycle of 30 years? What are we going to do? And you know, sometimes we think that to do something big here needs us to boil the ocean or to have a PhD in rocket science. No, you don't need that. Just one drop. If just the 5 of us, 6, at this table, you take a glass of water, you put a drop. She puts her own drop. You put your own drop, and so on. And all of us do that. That glass will fill up with water, won't it? You didn't have to boil the ocean, did you? That's what we need to remember, that it's just a small contribution in your small corner that you need to make sure that we can advance. The other day we had a very interesting session talking about corporate bullying. Talking about corporate bullying. And there were quite a number of stories that we shared around corporate bullying and how it also, in a way, I think, affects these numbers. What is the environment that women work in? I think all of us can tell you stories, especially from the panel. We can tell you our own individual experiences of what we have gone through and still decided, you know what, this is a very important place to be in, and we're going to stick it out. Because at some point, we have to pass on the baton to somebody else, and we have to make sure that the future generations also can learn a thing or two from us. So when we were talking about corporate bullying, you know, there were a number of things that, you know, sort of sprung to mind. But one of the big ones, which I always have a big issue about, is us as ladies pulling each other down. The PhD syndrome. We are so good at that. We are so good at that. Instead of looking at nature and learning from nature and saying, what can we learn from nature? So one of the things that I do in the mornings, very early, I go out for a walk. Normally take about an hour and a half, thereabouts. But I always just marvel at the sky. You know, I look at the sky and I see how vast it is. It is so vast. And there are different stars. Some are very bright, others are very dim. But it looks so beautiful. And it always reminds me of all of us as human beings, and maybe more specifically talking to women, it reminds me as women that we have so many opportunities, so vast. I don't see a star that is wanting to elbow one out to say, you know what, you're too bright. I think you must dim yourself a bit. No. In fact, sometimes I even watched the other day, the moon was out. It was beautiful. And as it was just about to disappear in the sky, and the sun was rising, the moon was just getting more and more beautiful. It was getting yellow. And I was just watching. And I'm looking this side, the sun is coming up, the moon is about to disappear, but it is so beautiful. And I'm thinking, why don't you just learn? As women, now focusing on women, why don't we just learn that, look at the sun. The sun is saying, moon, it's my time now. But I'm going to let you leave in style. It looked so beautiful. And it disappeared, and then the sun was out to do its job. Now imagine if all the stars decided we all want to be as bright as the sun, all of us. So we would never have night, would we? Because it would be light all the time. So that is how life is. As women, we must know that we need to pull each other up. We need to work together. We need to collaborate. There is time for everything in life. there is my time to do the work and to really graft and put the results on the table. And then there's time for me to pull others up and say, I've done my bit. What I have to do now is to pick up the rest and help. So we want to empower women in the energy space. There is a big difference that we can make. There is really a huge difference that we can make. Colleagues, I'm looking at the time and it looks like I'm being told I'm in the red zone, but I need a little bit, just one more minute. Do we remember what Central Energy Fund is all about? Can we do a test today? Okay, I'm going to remind you, there's just two more things that I would like to do, please, Nozipho. The first one is just to tell you who Central Energy Fund is, and then I'm going to close off with a poem. I always like to read poems, and I must tell you this story. You know, when I was at primary school, high school, secondary school, thereabouts, I hated reading. Anything that had to do with history, anything that had to do with remembering or writing stories, I hated it. Poetry was never my thing. I was a numbers person. Give me numbers. I crunched the numbers. Accounting, I won prizes at junior, standard 8, I think it was. Or somewhere, you remember that? Okay, now I'm going to give away my age. I think I'm getting to that dangerous zone where I'm giving off my age. Okay, I'm a pensioner. So there was a time where we would do before the matric, I think standard 8 or thereabouts, you also had an external exam, and then you would get a certificate for it. But the point I really wanted to make is I really was not a blah, blah, blah person. The writing stuff, the poetry, the reading, I actually picked it up much later. I remember one time my dad said to me, here is a book, please read about Adolf Hitler. I must have been 10 at that time. Man, I struggled. For days, I couldn't get past the first 2-3 sentences. I just couldn't. And then Dad would ask me a bit later, so how far are you with Adolf? And I would think, ish. Then I would go back and try a paragraph. I got stuck. I was a numbers person. So I just couldn't do poetry. I couldn't do history. I just did numbers. But be that as it may, now I do like poems. So I will share a poem with you just now, which really also just talks about nature and how I think we should look at ourselves as women, especially around the issue of supporting each other. We really need to support each other. We're mothers, for goodness sake. You know, we are mothers. So as a mother, you nurture. You make sure that your children are fed. And your children don't have to be your biological children, by the way. If you are an aunt, if you are a sister, you are a mother. You are a mother. So we need to make sure that those instinctive values, we bring them to the fore. So here's what Central Energy Fund is about. So there are 5 subsidiaries in Central Energy Fund, and then we've got a 6th baby. We've got a baby in the family, and you know how exciting when you have a baby in the family. So the first one is African Exploration, Mining and Finance Company. Very fondly, we call them AEMFC, or AE for short. That is our mining arm. So currently they do coal mining, but they are also wanting to venture into other mining of PGMs, for example, and also rare earth metals. So it's a very small outfit, but very, very critical in our business. Then the second one we have is iGas. iGas is a co-owner of a 865-kilometer line from Mozambique into South Africa, in Secunda, and there we transport gas so that we can send it off to or sell it off to our various customers. We co-own it with the Mozambicans and also with Sasol. And then the third one is PASA. PASA is Petroleum Agency of South Africa. It is basically our the arm that is looking at the regulation side, and they also promote the exploration and production in the country. And then we've got Petro SA. Petro SA is our oil and gas exploration company. They also have a refinery, and they are located in Mossel Bay. And then the fifth one is Strategic Fuel Fund, which is really our asset strategic oil repository for the government. So where we have crude oil in Saldanha, we've got some bunkers there where we actually put our crude oil for the country. And then they also have infrastructure, different areas where they have tanks where they store the crude oil. They are thinking of venturing into storage of finished products. One of the challenges that we have currently as a country is the fact that our refineries, out of the 6 that we have, only 2 are working. So it means that the needs for the country, for our fuel requirements, have to be supported by importing product, which becomes expensive, and also with all these geopolitical tensions that we see across the globe, it actually makes it very difficult. And that's why you see partly, the price of fuel going up and down, and then it also has a trickle effect on everything else that we have. And then the baby in the family is the South African National Petroleum Company. This company is basically formed to merge 3 companies, iGas, Petro SA, and Strategic Fuel Fund. So it was put in place this year. In fact, we are in the process of merging. It has the board in place. It's got the executive in place. And so we are really focused on getting it up and running so that we can get these 3 companies to merge and form this formidable company we call SNPC. So that is it about a Central Energy Fund group of companies. But next year, I am not going to tell you. I'm going to test you. Because now you know. You've got ample time to go and look and see what Central Energy Fund is all about. Let me read this poem before the battery dies on me. Now, it's interesting that now we don't have load shedding. So if my phone dies on me now, I don't know who I'm going to blame for it. Because I should have just charged my phone last night. And somehow who has a number of phones here? I just don't want to feel alone. How many phones do you have? 2, 3, 2? Okay, I've got 3 phones. I've got 3 phones, but at least I feel better that I'm not the only one who's got a number of phones. Okay, let's see if I can read. All right, I've got a poem I like, and please, if you can Google it, it's called Live a Life That Matters. I love it, but I've shared it so many times that today I'm not going to share that one. I'm going to share the one that says Shining Light. And I really think that it's important because, again, coming back to this example I made on corporate bullying and us women pulling each other down. And the example I made about nature, about the sky, about the stars, the sun, the moon. I want us to know as women, as we end off Women's Month, that first of all, Women's Day is every day. I said this last time as well. Women's Day is every day. Women's Month is really a month for us to elevate the issues of women. But it shouldn't stop here. It really shouldn't stop here. We must know that the light shines all the time. And so I want to read you this poem as I end off. And it says, "You are a shining light, a light that makes the world a more brighter place, a candlelight of warm sunshine and happiness, a shining light that shines the brightest like a full moon. Go and shine your light in the world, your golden torch of enlightenment and peace, a shining light of hope and optimism that lights up the world, a candle of light that burns forever. And this was written by a person called Brett Strotman. So it is really a lovely poem. So, colleagues, I hope that you are going to enjoy the session today. And we are looking forward to interacting with yourselves and also, of course, looking forward to hearing the questions that you might have for us. And of course, you know, as I always say, we don't have the monopoly of knowledge. We have our experiences that we can share that cannot be taken away from us. But also we can share a thing or two, and hopefully out of what we are going to be talking to you about today, there will be something for you. Sometimes, even when you go to church, you find that there's just one thing that Mfundisi tells the whole congregation, and it resonates with you. So I'm hoping that we'll find that resonance. And thank you very much, Nozipho. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Madam Chair, if I can invite you to maybe just take a seat. I'll keep this seat for myself, and you're more than welcome to take a seat, because what we're going to do now is I'm going to invite the other panelists who then will come and join us to enable us to transition into our panel discussion. I must say, I really enjoyed that context setting. And one of the things that stands out for me is, what I've written down here is the possibility that we can be performing while pretty. And that it's both and. And I've heard so many young ladies, as you've alluded to, Madame Noah, who see what they look like as a hindrance to their ability to show up with the performing posture. And I think part of our job is to be accessible role models that says, I can be a full woman in all of the things that make me a woman and still perform, and still lead, and still get the job done. And that doesn't take away from my ability to get things done. So I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the analogy of passing the baton to each other. And of course, the invitation to keep seeing ourselves as a light. And I think that's another thing that we probably need to internalize, because a posture of light is very different from somebody who sees their light as dimmed. So, joining us on the stage now is Dr. Nompumelelo Siswana. She is the founder and managing director of NABA Consulting. As she comes up, allow me to highlight that she is an absolute leader in the oil and gas sector and has been for about 25 years. And that's included doing work across marketing, sales, and trading of crude oil, fuel, and petrochemicals, particularly when she was vice president looking after supply, trading, and logistics at Petro SA. She's also had an incredible corporate career, having worked for BP, for Engen, for Kalulo Investments, and continues to serve the country through various boards. Let's give her a big round of applause as she comes up. Thank you very much, Dr. Siswana, and I'm going to invite you to take whichever seat you're comfortable with. And then joining us on stage as well is Madame Unathi Figlin, the founder and managing director of Flonela Engineering Solutions. As she comes up, she reminded me today, because I had gotten it wrong, she is the chairperson of Petro SA, so let's give her a round of applause. An engineer with just shy of 20 years in the engineering space, and she's done all forms of engineering, from management to infrastructure, project management, power utilities, railways, as well as executive leadership. She's also served at Eskom in the distribution business and has also served as an executive director across a range of different entities. Let's give her a big round of applause as she comes up. I think I might have missed, she sits on the board of CEF as well. So that's, as I said, if I read the bios fully of each of these women, I don't think we'd go home anytime soon. Madame Makululu is the Managing Director and Sales Executive at Alstom Rolling Stock South Africa. Let's give her a round of applause as she comes up. Another theme that you'll hear, another engineer, and she's also served the country in her capacity as the Deputy Director General for Energy. This was under the Department of Public Enterprises. And that saw her play a role in the sector by overseeing utility operations and policy formulation as well as regulation. Welcome and thank you for being here. I forgot to mention that she also has an ESCOM history. And so again, the engineers and ESCOM former leaders are all here with us. And then last but certainly not least is Madame Dudu Tlatrayo. She's the founder and CEO of Change EQ. Let's give her a round of applause. She has absolutely deep experience in the corporate sector. It's included leading as a partner at Ernst & Young. She's had incredible roles at Andisa Capital, which was a subsidiary or is of Standard Bank. She's also had a leading role at ABSA and Telkom SA. She's also taken up the task of group executive at Transnet, where she was heading up the restructuring, mergers and acquisitions portfolio. And her roles at a board level have included the PIC. They've included Pareto, which we know is the largest black-owned property company, included the Land Bank, as well as Airports Company South Africa. So let's give her a very big round of applause. Let me also acknowledge those online who've already started sending questions. I've received them. Thank you very much. And keep sending them. And remember, of course, our hashtag is Women in Energy. As you hear sound bites and insights, please feel free to continue to share these online. One of the things I wanted to do in this conversation was for us not to miss the gift of this moment. If you heard me introducing our experts, I was talking about 25 years, 18 years, 20 years. So these are women who have been in the sector. And for us to have a truly intergenerational conversation, I think it's important to go back a little bit, to try and understand from their perspective, 25 years ago, little you, because if I look at all of them, could have been little thems at that time, what was that experience of being a woman in energy then? And I think when we understand our history, it allows us to be more informed of our present and what we want to do about our future. Are we in agreement? So I'm going to give them the same opening question, and I'm going to ask them to be brief, but I'd like for them to take us to that place. I'm going to ask Madame Dudu first. Say, Madame Dudu, when you reflect, when you first stepped into this particular sector, who were you at that time? And how would you describe that experience for yourself? And what has it taken to be here in 2024? In 2024.
Yeah, a very interesting question, and good morning to everybody. Imagine you are probably, 25 years old,
Sure.
you're 30 years old, you walk into a boardroom. In that boardroom, there's only males. And guess what? The majority of those males are also white. You are black and you are a woman. You walk in, you've got your little piece of paper because you think you're prepared for the conversation. But as you walk in, nobody gives you the time of day. They simply look at you in passing. And then they start the conversations amongst themselves. And they would talk to one another, giving each other eye contact. And you're sitting there, you're thinking, should I raise my hand? Should I keep quiet? What should I do? So those were the things that were taking place during our time. And I guess they're still taking place even now. These ladies will probably attest to what is happening in the boardrooms of today. But it was worse during those days, Nozipho. When you are young, you're trying to find your own space, but you're also a woman. But what I could say is that you need to claim your space, because it's only when you raise your voice that they stop and they say, oh, she can think. She's pretty, but she can think.
Yeah.
Or in fact, she can even speak English. But all I'm saying, colleagues, is that we need to claim our space as women in every sphere of life wherever we go. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think it's an incredible insight that you share with us, this idea that We need to claim our voice, to use our voice. And you'll notice, guys, I'm going to go very practical because I think we need to get to the granularity of these things. One of the things I always say to women is that start using your voice starts with how you sit. And I always say bums at the back of your seat. Square your shoulders so that even before you've opened your mouth, they're already looking at you as somebody who has something to say. How did you find your voice? What did you do to find your voice and to have the confidence to actually speak up and say, no, I'm here?
I think the biggest ingredient is being prepared. Because if you are prepared, there is magic that gets created when you are ready. When you've prepared for that interview, when you've prepared for the job, when you've prepared for the conversation that is going to be taking place in the boardroom, you are ready and you are present. You are able to speak with confidence.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest ingredient is making sure that in whatever situation, you are ready and prepared.
Thank you very much. And I think that's incredible. My mother used to say, "Uzwicule," which is be able to sing whatever it is that you've prepared in and out. And I really, truly resonate with that. Let me come to you, Magulu, with the exact same question. Young, formulating policy, building regulation. Take us back, your first engagement with the sector. What is that experience like for you? And I mean, you look young even now. So, I mean, I can only imagine how young you were then.
Morning, Nozipho, and morning to the audience. Yes, I don't fall into the 20-year category. So to really answer your question, I think 20 years ago, starting with actually choosing a career in engineering was back in the days where we chose careers out of textbooks. I think the young people here cannot fathom having to read a career book. This used to be something that was in a career book, and you have this idea that you want to be an engineer. I thought I wanted to be a design engineer. I finished school. I still had these crazy ideas and no objective reality to actually contrast my ambitions against. I walked into a power plant, a very intimidating environment, massive infrastructures. If you haven't really had that immersion and exposure before, it can be very intimidating. I think very much like Dudu, you walk into, as an engineering trainee, you walk into control rooms when there's failures on the plant. It's a room full of people who are running around. You don't know what's going on. There's lots of screens. No one is talking to you. And then tomorrow morning at production meeting, they are asking for feedback, and everyone says, "Mahola was da." Then you give feedback, and you're completely, out of depth. And I think really that was the environment at the time. Support systems were not as big, I think, hopefully, as what others are experiencing now. And I think, like Dudu's saying, the biggest thing was to really immerse yourself in information. I always say there's a small clip I did on YouTube where I talk about the difference between someone with 20 years of experience and someone fresh out of school. And of course, this is an exaggeration, but it's information.
Right.
And where we sit today, there is unlimited amount of information. The things that I learned in third year of control systems that were held by the professor, and he's the only person who knew what was going on, what the next slide or transparency was going to be on the screen. All of that stuff is available today. And I think for younger people, there should be really a move from where we started off to where we are today. Of course, there's still challenges, and there are things that you have to experience in the corporate sector for you to grow. But I do think there is a lot of information that you can really immerse yourself in, and that would allow you to be really a lot more effective in how you start off compared to where we started off, where really information was in somebody's drawer, and you had to go and ask for it.
What I'm hearing you say is that we also have the agency to empower ourselves with information. And I think that's really powerful. But also, transparency is, hands up if you were in the transparency age when the professor would put there's a few of us in the room. So you're
I don't know what I'm talking about.
you're not alone. But one of the things that you've touched on that I want to double click on is if we reflect, Magulu, on the impact of policy in the sector. Has it been an enabler in terms of the inclusion and participation of women, or has policy failed us?
I really am very passionate about talking about policy in energy, and I think more broadly as a country, because I think this is a space where I find that we as women are not as active. We are having conversations down the stream when we talk about execution. So I think historically, there's been a lot of policies, both at corporate and at country level, that have really thrust a lot of women and an enabling environment for us to come in. Policies at ESCOM around ensuring that there's a bursary and pipeline of people, ensure that there was a pool of people, some of us who could really benefit from that sort of environment. Today, when we talk about policy, I think some of the sort of numbers that Ayanda was showing on the screen are a product of policy choices that we've made as a country. Our public procurement policies, we are products of that, right? So when you look at the allocation for women enterprises, we are seeing the pushback on the localization for the renewables industry, which is the space that would really be powerful and impactful in terms of ensuring that more women enterprises participate. So I think there is agitation to have a more radical policy, but I certainly think there could be a lot more. A few years ago, I used to chair the women's chapter of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers. And I actually wrote an article on this, that the transition in energy for me is really a test about whether we are really genuine about this conversation or not. Because if we go through this energy transition, and we end up with a sector that still has 20% of women, and not 50% as we sit today and make choices, it says we were never genuine about the conversation. And we are still saying, oh, let's make a small space. What is on the other side? So who's making the choice? And why is the way in which we are making choices presented in such a way that the space being created for women, not that we are really legitimate participants in the sector?
What I love about what you're saying is that I want to bring it back to the analogy of the baton, is that policy actually becomes the baton, that if we are intentional about what we're passing on to the next generation, we can radically restructure a sector by how we approach policy. I want to move on, but there's a thing that's scratching at me, and that is the idea of, so are we doing enough to put a gender lens into policy? Do you get the sense that where are the women? Does this work for women? Will it work for women? Is that question even something that's coming up in the policy conversation?
I think someone should do like a screenshot of rooms where gender conversations are taking place. That is the fundamental question: who's making policy?
Yes,
who's making energy policy and policy across different sectors? That is the question you should be asking, and that will tell you the fact that we remain consumers of policy. We are not active participant in the main. We are being told, here's your share. And we seem to be very comfortable with that. And I think I speak for myself as well, or for all of us who potentially have access to those kind of spaces. It's who's making policy.
So how do we become architects of policy and not just consumers of policy? What a beautiful question you've left us with. Madam Chair, let me come back to you. A beautiful setting, a beautiful grounding, framing the conversation for us. Take us back to your early days. Walking in, what was your experience of the sector? And if you think about where we are now, were there any fundamental differences?
I would say that I share quite what my colleagues have said as well, but I just want to take my experience maybe a little bit back in terms of when I came into contact with engineering as such. So my father was a civil engineer, and that, for me, as I was growing up, was a very interesting career. However, it was not popular in our black society. And people used to ask, so what does your father do? He's an engineer. Oh, what's that? And it used to frustrate the hell out of me because I just couldn't understand what was actually going on at that time. So we grew up, my sister and I, in construction sites, going to where Dad was working, and so forth, and got to see the country. So I think that triggered just not being able to explain to people what my father does.
Yeah,
it frustrated me to the extent of wanting to know more about it. But I think the second part that triggered my interest now, more specifically in electrical engineering, is that we lived in a four-roomed house. We didn't have electricity at home. So he comes home, home from work one day and he says, we're going to make our own electricity. Just make sure that you get some pots, some magnets. And he just mentions a whole host of things. And I thought, okay, so we can make our own electricity. So I think from that time, at Standard 6, I knew electrical engineering is what I'm going to be doing. So fast track to starting to work. Now starting to work, you know, being the only female around, and I think, you know, most of us experience that, most women, especially who were trained during that time. Not having role models, and Dad was very supportive. So I think that's kind of gave a little bit of an edge. But the boardroom was really, really difficult. I mean, I remember one time in one meeting, I was sitting in a meeting, a big meeting, a lot of white males. There were 3 of us who were engineers. And incidentally, it was a colored gentleman, an Indian gentleman, and myself, an African lady. I was working on a project in Khayelitsha, and they were speaking in Afrikaans in the meeting. And I was sort of drifting in and out because I could pick up here and there. And then at some point, one of my, it's your project, you have to answer. And I look around and I'm thinking, oh, were you speaking to me? So then I give the feedback on the project. And then fast forward, the chair of the meeting afterwards asked me, so were you lost in the meeting? I said, yes, you should have done the meeting in English. I was lost half the time. So those were some of the experiences that I had. And I found also that as I was growing in the career, you know, you'd go to a center and, you know, colleagues there would say, hey, na ek praat nie Afrikaans, ek praat nie Engels met die baas nie. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, we are steta in Xhosa. And then he looks at me. I said, we are steta na Xhosa. So, you know, we can use the language to separate each other, or we can use the language to, you know, pull together and be able to speak. So those were some of the experiences, but there were always, you know, 1 or 2 people in my corners. And it was mostly men, by the way. And of course, because of the industry, but also there were those men who believed in women, you know, who would really, you know, pull me up and say, okay, because I was always in my little corner. I didn't have people to socialize with. I didn't have people to talk to. A friend of mine who was also an engineer was in KZN. So we spent a lot of time on the phone exchanging notes. What's happening your side? Oh, okay, I've been promoted now. How much are you earning? Oh, okay, I got it. So that's what we did. It was just me and her speaking to each other. But we're always like islands, always islands. And it was tough. It was really tough. But again, as I say, there were those men who looked out for me, and they would pull me up, come and do this. And I remember one time I was invited to participate in the electrification of Khayelitsha, and I thought, this is really what I wanted to do. As a child, I wanted to see people have electricity in their homes. So initially, I thought, no, I was scared. I was really scared. And I think 6 months later, I was approached, and my boss said, it was now the senior guy who appointed me, said, come for this opportunity. And I thought, you know what, give it a go. I gave it a go, and, you know, the rest is history. I learned so much in that process. So it was really tough. It was cold.
It was cold, and one of the things that you've said, and I want to throw it to the audience so that we might reflect on it in our own spaces. What other ways, other than language, do we lock women out? Because that's the culture of an organization that has the impact of either including people and making them feel like they belong, or locking them out. There was a time when it was language, but potentially there are other practices now, other cultural behaviors that make others feel like they're not part of those who are legitimately in the room. And we've got to reflect on that, because a culture is actually made up of all the people in the room. I always say, when you think about the worst day when you were stuck in traffic and you're like, oh my goodness, this traffic is so bad, did you pause to think and realize that you are the traffic? If you weren't there, there would be less traffic. And so even the cultures that make up the organizations where women are either included or excluded, we are part of making up that cultural tapestry. And we have the example of language here. But what is the cultural practice that keeps the lights off for other people within your own teams? Let me jump to Dr. Siswan. I want to take it back. Same question. I'm going to build on that question, but I see a petite person even now. I can only imagine how petite you were then. How do you then walk into the space where it sounds like, for the most part, you're going to be the one of in those spaces? What was that experience like for you?
Thank you, Nozipho, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll go back actually to the time where I was just finishing my studies and outside South Africa and coming back to South Africa.
Yes.
My initial studies were in chemistry. And I wanted to specialize in an area that was not offered by the Faculty of Science in chemistry. And I went to the Department of Chemical Engineering, and I approached a lecturer who was an expatriate from South Africa. And I approached him to have a conversation whether this would be possible, because I don't have a junior degree in chemical engineering.
Yes.
And I approached him also because he, as a South African, I thought that maybe he could have been part of the anti-apartheid movement, you know. Little did I know that he emigrated because he saw opportunities and didn't want to deal with a person that looks like me. So I went to his office, and all he said was like, it's going to be so difficult for you because you don't have a degree in chemical engineering, blah, blah, blah. I don't have funds to support you. So I looked at him and I said, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I left and I decided I'm going to go straight to the head of the School of Chemical Engineering and hear what he's going to tell me, because my interest is in this particular area. And when I went to his office and I told him what I wanted to study, and he said, wow, thank you very much. Of course, I will see to it that I supervise you in that area.
Sure.
And I'm going to bring another professor from another university who's a specialist in the area so that we can co-supervise you. And that experience taught me in a way that even if you get pushbacks, there's a little voice, if you listen to that little voice that says, it's actually possible.
Yeah.
Forget about this and try the next person. Because there's always a supporting structure, visible and invisible.
Sure.
And so that's how I got to the School of Chemical Engineering, and then he created a program for me that, okay, the first 6 months you're going to be doing this, you're going to study this, you're going, you know, and bridged the chemistry experience with the engineering experience.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it helped me to see that in every person, there's something innate in us. We might have covered it with many layers of not so nice experiences, but it always pops up if you do listen to that part of you that says, strive, go forward, it's possible. I come back to South Africa, and I get into an organization. I won't mention names of the company, it's not relevant. The head of the department says to me, you know, it's going to take you 8 years to actually understand what's going on in the oil and gas industry.
Sure.
Of course, I've had another experience, you know, when I was studying. So I said to myself, okay, wait and see. I stayed in that organization for 4 months. And I said, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Because what he thought I would appreciate is something, I mean, I would do my work and finish 11:30, 12. And then I have to sit around because, you know, everybody's working until 4 or 5. And I thought, that's not nurturing, even if I'm having a salary at the end of the month. But this is not what I'm capable of. You know, so I had to resign, and I left. I went to another company. And there, I found a supporting structure. And people who showed me parts of me that I didn't even know, who encouraged me. And
Yeah.
I knew that is really empowering for me. And I also realized that it's not only the technical skills that are important. I have to develop another or see aspects of myself that I can bring into the table. And I had a support structure outside the organization. People who would say, have you looked at this? Actually, part of you is like this. So that I don't go and be nice, or it's okay not to be nice. And also not to be a chaperone for anybody. And so I had that support structure. And the support structure, it's people who know nothing about the energy sector. They're not interested, but they are interested in me,
Yes.
for me to find out more about me. So that's really what carried me through in my journey in the industry.
So I must say, I'm floored firstly at just everything I've heard so far. The level of courage and bravery to just go and do something you've never seen. You know, we always talk about, oftentimes we can only dream as far as what we've seen. And the theme here has been, no, it didn't exist. I'd never seen anyone. But, you know, I went and I did it. And I take that away from myself because I think potentially that's what it takes to lead in these really difficult sectors. I'm also hearing you say, listen for the yes and the no. Because people's no's are within their own context and in their own belief systems about what people like you can and cannot do. I'm hearing you having very intentional conversations about yourself to say, I'm not the person who sits and does nothing until 5. I'm actually a different type of person. And that, I hope, is a provocation to all of us to say, what are you saying about yourself and how does that determine how you show up within context? But I'm also hearing, I don't know if you guys heard it, she said it's so, what's the new TikTok trend with so demurely, right? So demure, it's okay not to be nice. Did you guys hear that? And we often miss, because we expect a person who delivers that line to be saying it with flamboyance and so on. It's okay not to be nice. And we'll double click on that because sometimes we trip over who we think we're supposed to be and what people like us are supposed to behave like. We miss the opportunity to just be ourselves and to get the work done. I want to just quickly double click on something. You spoke about an environment and finding a supportive environment. What does that mean today? When we try and say we want to create an enabling and supportive environment for women, what are we saying? What are we trying to do exactly?
So sometimes the environment is supportive, but you don't see it. Because we are layered with so many experiences. And so sometimes we miss certain things. We don't see what is in front of us. We perceive it differently for what it is. And any other person perceive it based on your experiences.
Yeah.
So I don't separate work in a particular environment and work within oneself. Because if you have worked on yourself, then you only see, oh, okay, no, that one doesn't work for me. Oh, okay, that one works. And so you kind of dance in this environment. There's always, in an environment, people who will support you, always. And so you spend time with them. You reveal yourself more. They reveal themselves more. And say, maybe this is what is possible for you. That's why I was saying there are parts of ourselves that we will never see if we don't have people telling us about ourselves. And things that you have to work on.
Yeah.
Because you always have to work on yourself. And say, no, you know what? In that presentation, there's something that you missed. Or you remember that experience. You didn't bring it forward so that people can see more of what is there. So
I think you're going to leave us very challenged because also the natural tendency is to say, it's not me. It's the environment. It's the policy. It's the boss. It's the chairperson. It's the manager. It's never me. And almost what I'm hearing you say is, have you done the work as well? As we work on the environments, do we work on ourselves in tandem? So that those works almost meet each other at a place that makes it possible to be our best selves. So I want to come to you, Madam Onati. It's the same question. And I really want to hear from you, your experience as you engaged with this sector.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Nozi, for that. I think I want to differ with my colleagues.
Go for it.
my environment was, the ground was already leveled. The time I joined ESCOM, there was this drive for transformation, drive for black women in energy. I remember when I joined ESCOM, I had the light current experience. So I joined heavy current environment, and I sat in that interview, and they asked questions which are heavy current. And they said I did so bad in that interview. But there was this one guy who said, when you left university, did you remember everything? So basically, let's give her a chance. I will teach her. I'll make it my responsibility for her to get to where she should be. And then that's how I got into the environment. And later, I'm looking at Chenoa here. We had black women who were already in leadership positions. This is early 2000.
Yeah.
Right? So we get there, and then they said, we need to promote people, but these black engineers, they are not competent enough. They don't have the compliance requirements for these positions. And then Chenoa is saying, we'll make them. We'll make them. We need to get them to get these requirements, but let's get them to act in the positions while they're getting the skills. So there was like this drive to get us to get, I'll make an example, government tickets in early 2000 for black females.
Sure.
A group of us. It was difficult. And I went to her and I was like, yo, this is a big ask. I didn't believe in myself, but she believed in us. This is a big ask. Me, I'm an engineer. I can always get my PR and, write my report, but GCC, that thing is so difficult. Very few people get it. And she was like, you will get it. I'm not going to appoint incompetent engineers in these positions. I will make sure that you get it. I will support you to get it. And I went there, and I went to her office again to just go and say, ma'am, there are people who are capable to do these things, but not me. She says, thou shalt. Then I was like, okay, fine. She said now, when I told her, she's like, you left because you could not take it.
She did.
Wabalega.
And I was like, you know what? I left ESCOM and I joined PRASA. That time, I was like, you know what? I started this thing. And I remember I wrote in my board the goal, remember the goal. I had that goal, and I was like, I need to finish this. I started this thing, and I need to finish it. And early 2000, I got my GCC, and I called her, and I said, thank you. And then imagine the offers that were coming thereafter. Thanks to people who believed in us when we could not believe in ourselves. Thank you to the structures that were put in place to say, we have these people who have potential, but, we're going to enhance their potential and develop it and get them to be there. I'm telling you, the sky became, I got to meet, and became also, because someone believed in me, I became a multiplier as well. I developed a little mini-me's. I had programs as well, GCC programs, to get people to get this compliance requirement. Because black females, we lazy. Sometimes we like, these are for certain people, this thing is difficult. Like, if I can do it, you can do it.
Sure.
No? It got to that point, and I think also even in boards, I had a gentleman who was saying that, Unati, I want to get you to this board without payment. Just come here and get experience. Like I'm saying, my ground was leveled by certain people who were there already. So say that, no, come. Don't expect payment. Just come and learn. We'll put you as an alternate director just to get the experience. Get there. You don't know anything about board. We could take you to some training. Served, no payments, grew. Grew as a person. And you put that in your CV.
Yeah.
People will ask me to say, how do you get to boards? Because we don't have boards, they always say you must have board experience. Small things like voluntary activities. Small things like getting into a body corporate. Small things like getting into an investment committee in your organization. It gets you there. It develops you for the next level. It prepares you. So when you're talking about supportive
Environments.
they are there. We just need to just allow ourselves. I even have the terminology to say, go for it. Do it even though you're not sure. Do it scared.
Yeah.
Do it not sure, but go to take the step of faith and do it. And see the experience that you get, the exposure that you get.
Yeah.
You become. You fake it until you make it.
So I absolutely love that. Every now and then, we find women who stand in the gap and believe in us when we are not capable of believing in ourselves. The question back to us as well is, are you spending that social capital on others? If somebody has stood in the gap for you, who are you standing in the gap for? I love how you speak about part of that relationship was making a way, making sure there's a policy, there's a process that gets you the compliance. Because at the end of the day, you have to be appointed on merit. Otherwise, we have a series of women jobs or soft jobs that are considered not real jobs because they're not appointments on merit. I want to come to Chair one last time, and then I want to open it up. We've got a timer here that says we've only got 25 minutes left, which is shocking. Chair, you raised the issue of pull her down syndrome. And what I want to get to is that for many of you on the stage, you were amongst the first. And your responsibility would have been not only to open the door, but to keep the door open. How did you ensure that in every space that you occupied, you...
And I thought, okay, let me see what qualifications do they have.
Yes.
That will also help us, to be there, to be on par. And when I introduced what Unathi was talking about, to say, I will make you act in this position until you get this qualification, because I know it's important as you go up.
Yes.
So those were the opportunities I would create to say, okay, let's do this. Here's an opportunity. Here's a position that's open.
Yeah.
Come in, do the course, I will pay for it.
Yeah.
And then you can be appointed. As soon as you show me your certificate, I will appoint you permanently into the position. So those are some of the things I will do. The second one, which I just want to highlight, is, right in the early days, as I was also looking for, I was looking for people like me. And there were a little bit more women coming in, 3, 4, 5 years into my position at Eskom. And I went to my manager and I said, I really would like you to sponsor, just a get-together of us women.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, but what I knew was that I needed to get someone like me as well, to be part of this. And we can share and see am I the only one who feels a little bit left out in the boardroom? Am I the only one who is, told, no, you can't work, but, just go and read. When Dr. Sono was talking about her experience,
yeah,
and not having a full day's work, I also experienced that at some point. There was a resonance there because I experienced it. So I spoke to the other ladies to say, what can we do? We need to get together and see, can we set up some programs for ourselves? And go and ask. And like I was saying, a lot of the managers that I had, fortunately, they would support. So my manager said, you want me to pay for, coffee and your tea party? No, it's okay. He was kind of teasing, but he paid for it.
Yeah.
And for me, how he saw it actually didn't matter. What mattered was that I need to get people together and, and we talk about our issues. But other things, having programs in the environment, I spend a lot of my time in Eskom, of course. So having programs there where we focus specifically on women. I remember that when I was part of the EXCO committee there, I said to my colleague, we need to start up something for the organization because we are the only 2 women at EXCO at this point. And when there was an initiative that was done, it was done many years ago by another CEO, so we need to do something because there's no one who's really looking out for women at this point. And so we started off. Here at CEF, I said to Zinhle, we need to do something here. And this is part of that program to say, what are we going to do? Everywhere I go, I need to make a contribution in whatever way it is possible. So you study the environment, you look at the requirements, and then you say, okay, what can we do for women? Because you've got to keep up the visibility. You've got to make sure that the policy side is there, but also policy implementation is important. Sometimes you've got a nice policy that says, advance women, and then nothing happens. Then we sit with the numbers that we saw, because people like us, sometimes, you just let life pass by. So we've got to be active. We've got to actively look for solutions and work with other people, because you cannot have all the answers. You can't. You can't have all the information. You don't have all the experience. Everybody here is sharing different experiences, but there will be areas that intersect. But we have to work together, because we do not have monopoly of knowledge. We do not have monopoly of experience. So you've got to work with people.
So I'm gonna open it up on that note, because what I'm hearing you say, Chair, as well, is that as we leave in this space, have we interrogated the policies that do exist within our organizations? And that policy, the likelihood that there's no policy on the advancement of women today in an organization is very thin. But the likelihood that it's just sitting, gathering dust and not being operationalized is probably very real. So use the policy to start the conversation and to get the support to do something. And I suppose the other question I'm hearing you say, Chair, is what am I doing? And I think we need to walk away with that as well, because we all have some degree of agency within our sphere of influence. I've got 20 minutes on the clock. I've got a couple of questions that have come in online. Thank you to our online audience. But I also want to make available a roving mic here in the room for anybody, thank you so much, Pilar, who would like to ask a question. I'm open to taking comments as well, if anybody would like to make a comment. So can I just get a show of hands? I have a hand right here in the front, Pilar. I have another one there. So I've got 3 for now. So let's start there, and then the lady here in the front table, and then we'll go to the lady there. Please go ahead. We can start. Yeah, that's fine. As you get the microphone, if you could quickly please introduce yourself, and then to your question, I'd like to take as many as possible. So if we can be sharp, short, concise, and to the point, that would be fantastic. Please go for it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chisikawe. I'm one of those loners who just wandered here by mistake, if I can put it. But my question is, I don't know to anybody in the panel, is at times you sort of feel like you've got that inner voice and that dream which is telling you to go somewhere, but you find that around you, in a way, nobody sees that thing, and you start questioning yourself to say, am I crazy for wanting this big dream for myself, or can it really be reality? And how do you keep pushing yourself to say, I must still go ahead and forge forward? Because for me personally, I've got a daughter, and I believe that with everything that I've gone through, I need to make it easier for her.
Yeah.
And I can't give up, but then at the same time around me, I feel like I'm just this crazy person. I mean, as an example for this event, when I saw the advert, I invited almost everybody around me. Nobody was interested, and I still just had to come on my own. And the question is, am I crazy, or, or there is really just a way for somebody to just push themselves forward and say,
Fantastic. So I will collate the questions, and then I will spread them out, so please don't worry about that. So is Chisikawa crazy, or is there a recipe for resilience to keep pushing even when the going gets tough? Let's get that question, please. Go for it. You can take the microphone and introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our beautiful panel. My name is Masichaba Makua. Firstly, thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. I just want to ask that, just to carry on from what she was saying, that at times we feel like we ask ourselves if we are crazy for wanting what we want. Because of we go to rooms, we go to boardrooms. Right now, it's not like as it was in the day where you find male and whites. Right now, you actually find women
Yeah.
in the boardrooms and black, young, and all of that. But there is still no help, if I can put it that way. So I just want to ask, what do we do now? Because we have the right people seemingly, but we do not get the help. We still struggle the same way as you did back then. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chaba. So practically, how do we open up the space and make it more inclusive? So we'll get to that. I do want to wrap up with a practical insight from each of our panelists so we can give everyone something tangible to walk away with. There was another hand here in the middle of the room, and then I see the hand there by Pila, but there was a lady who's had her hand up here. Yeah, go for it. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kinsani Mabunda. I am in marketing and media, and for some reason, God sort of shifted me into the energy space when I started my business, that was not the idea. So I worked a bit with LPG, and one of the interesting things when we were doing a campaign is understanding that there's a lot of lack in rural areas in terms of education. And what my question is for the ladies in the panel is, how are the organizations that you're working in now assisting, and I think it's closer to what Ms. Chaba is asking, assisting young women within rural and townships in South Africa in terms of education, in terms of understanding what opportunities are there for them in this space. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kansani. So where are the opportunities exactly, and how are we getting them to in front of women in the township and rural areas? I'll take that hand, then I'll take one more, and then I'll come back to the panel. Please go. I've noted your hand, so you'll be the last hand. Go for it, please.
Morning, everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's another question there. Okay, so let's take the same table. You can get up. Thank you so much. Please go for it. Then we'll go behind you, and then we'll close it off here.
Morning, everyone. I'm Unati Hlati from the rail sector. One thing I'd like to say is to humbly say thank you. We are in an environment where there's no emotions anymore as women. And we tend to think that you need to be stronger to be able to survive. For me, this session has touched a lot, and we really appreciate you coming out to talk to us. In a question that I wanted to ask, there is this new world that has been presented, where we had a global shutdown and we had to just wake up and we run. You have kids, you have schools that have changed their academics, where you find yourself being a teacher at home.
Yeah.
You have work, you have presentations to prepare at night. What I wanted to ask is, where do you see us in future? We will survive, if I can put it that way. Thank you.
Sure. Unati, thank you so much. In this post-COVID world, that's revealed so much about the burden that women carry. Where does this end and where does it go? Let's take the question at the back.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm Guguletu from Custom Career Connections. Basically, I revamp CVs. And what I want to find out from the panel and looking at the stats that we saw at the beginning is that there's so many women, there's so little women in the sector. So what I want to find out is there a way that we limit ourselves in the way we sell ourselves on our CV that makes us not shine, and perhaps maybe the male counterparts get to get jobs because of the way we sell ourselves?
Yeah. Guguletu, thank you very much. I love it when I hear a business development question in there as well. Final question, let's take that question from you. Please go for it.
My name is Nentantla Movundlela. I'm from an organization called SC for All, Sustainable Energy for All. So my question may be focused on best practice. So we have a beautiful panel of women, and what I can hear is that most of you are from the public sector, and that's where it comes across as though the public sector has developed a kind of best practice to be able to create opportunities for women in the energy sector. However, the future of energy is largely privatized. And so what does it mean then also, even from a policy point of view, in terms of the future of women within energy,
Sure.
but within the newer forms of energy?
Thank you, Snenhlanhla. And it's interesting you raised that. I mean, a lot of the ladies have experience in both sectors, but I suppose your question really is, what might we learn from how the public sector has leveraged policy to drive change, and why is it so slow in some aspects of the private sector? I'm going to work my way through the questions and ask that we see where we pick up and where we drop off. And I'm going to maybe start off with Madame Dudu. Let me come back to you. There have been a number of questions, I think Chisikawa's question, Masetshaba's question as well, that speaks to the inner conversation and the resilience that's required to make it in an otherwise tight and competitive space. I'd love for you to comment on that. But also, the second running theme is, what do we need to do? What is the next possible step? So if you're a woman in the audience right now who wants to get into the energy sector and is not part of the sector, where would you point that young person to say, well, this is probably where you should be looking for information, pathways to become a participant in the sector? Over to you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Nozipho, for the question. I think Dr. Siswana spoke to the issue of the inner voice. I would like to call it self-mastery.
Yes.
Because I want to believe that transformation and empowerment is an inside job. Because it has to start with you. If you are not feeling empowered, you yourself, it becomes very difficult to empower anybody else. So you have to transform yourself first before you can extend a hand to transform and empower somebody else. So how do you then empower yourself? I'm in the space that Dr. Siswana is in because I believe that you need to find a way of going within. If you're going within yourself, you are able to then find the vision and the space where you want to place yourself so that you can serve humanity in a much bigger and much more structured way. But it has to start with yourself. So I always say, fill your cup first before you can give something else to somebody else. And how do you do that? You also need to empower yourself with knowledge, because knowledge gives you power. When you go into those conversations, it doesn't matter who's sitting in the boardroom, because your cup is full, you are ready, you are prepared, you are full yourself. So I always say you need to start with making sure that your inner person is in the right space, it's anchored, and you believe in yourself. Now, practically, I think also Ms. Noah spoke about how practically we need to do these things so that we do not end up here every 12 months talking about the same issues, but how do we make sure that we are then able to move with the conversations that we're having now. In organizations, there are a lot of support structures, Dr. Siswana, but it's how you access those supportive structures that already exist, how you put yourself out there so that you also have access to that infrastructure or structure that will empower you. And again, it talks to the same issue that I'm talking about, you yourself, making sure that you're able to put yourself out there. Now, in organizations, I think the biggest problem is the fact that, indeed, there are policies in place. In fact, in South Africa as a whole, there's no country in the world that has been able to develop policies in the manner that South Africa has.
Yeah.
So policy is not an issue. The vision in terms of what the country wants to do, that's not the problem. The problem is in the execution.
Yeah.
So practically, organizations now need to make sure that there are strategic frameworks that talk to the diversity and inclusivity of women. Once you have a framework, there has to be a champion
Yeah.
that makes sure that on an ongoing basis, there is monitoring and tracking of the objectives that have been set in terms of the development of women, in terms of the succession planning that involves women. So you're able to track that over a period of time. Then it stops being just conversations,
Yeah.
words that we use when we sit in boardrooms. It starts to become practical. We're bringing it to the ground and people can feel it, because last year I was taken over to be part of a program, but I can see where I am now because of that program.
Yeah.
But also, I think as women, Ms. Noah also spoke about, the PhD syndrome. I think as women here, all of us are agreed that that's not what we want to do. Otherwise, we would not be sitting in this auditorium today. We're wanting to empower others. We want to lift as we rise. But we won't be able to do that if we don't empower ourselves and transform ourselves. So I think, I'm repeating myself now, let's start with making sure that us ourselves are fully empowered so that we can then empower the rest of the people around us.
Transformation and empowerment is an inside job. It's not a popular opinion during Women's Month, because we're always looking to be empowered and to be transformed by something outside. That's a personal provocation. And you're either ready to hear it or you're not. But I think it's in the room, and it's up to whether we're going to inculcate it or not. Let me then acknowledge, there's a comment as I come to you, Makulu, online as well, that says, but Makulu, you're right. Who's making the policies? How do we get women to direct policies? How do we participate and benefit from these existing policies? So I want you maybe to answer two questions for me, Makulu. You spoke to us about using our agency to be informed, and that is a form of empowerment. Where do we go for information? There's a lot of questions that are coming through to say, but where's the information? Is there a particular website? Are there platforms? Are there networks that I need to be plugged into? So maybe a couple of those that you can share with us. And then just your comment around, for women who are saying, no, I want to be involved in the policy formulation part of this equation. How do they do that?
Thanks, Nozipho. A very good question. So I think a big part underlying that is about how we are organized as women.
Yes.
And how we have these conversations and who's presenting our voices in what spaces. So at a country level, when we have the new integrated resources plan that's out for public comment, or you have got the public procurement policy that is out for comment, who is presenting these comments to the government or to the various departments that are actually responsible? So for me, fundamentally is how we are structured as women, and that we need to harness a bit more the power of our conversation to be able to gather our thoughts, at least where policy is concerned, and to be able to agitate for that. I know there are a lot of platforms where we are really fragmented. We had this conversation last week with somebody that I worked with at ESCOM about why we don't have women in engineering. Actually, if you go online, there's plenty, but we just don't seem to be able to find each other and have one common platform and one common agenda where we can say, we sit in a room like this today, and everyone gets to understand what is the policy framework in relation to women and women in energy today, and what are the things that we think are the three policy positions that we really want to agitate for. So my proposition would really be that let's be better organized, and particularly around policy discussion in the sector beyond some of the topics that we have touched on today. And I think the doors in terms of access into government, access into the Department of Energy, we have full access to those kind of platforms, and they're always happy to engage. But when there is policy debate, you will not find women's formations around the table per se. I stand to be corrected if I'm absolutely wrong on this, but I don't know that strong voice that really sits publicly and around the table that makes the point. So I think let's be better organized around that.
And I think it's interesting what you say. If you just pop into Google, and you're absolutely right, the level of fragmentation that comes through at you is staggering. And so we need to do the work of converging and coming together. Better organization is what we're really looking for. I'm going to jump you, Chair, so that I can give you the final word as a way of wrapping us up. Let me then go to Dr. Siswana. Dr. Siswana, I want you to maybe take on this question from Kensani. And Kensani is saying, are we reaching women in the rurals and the rural areas and townships when we're thinking about programs and pathways into the sector? Are we going to those women, or are we maybe pretty comfortable at operating in the urban centers?
Well, from where I'm sitting, I tend to see women as quite capable. And the other aspect is that women are quite creative.
Yes.
And we don't tap into that creativity because somehow along the line, we were made to believe that it's all in the head. And so when you're talking to women in rural areas, you're talking to women who are, when we look at them, we think as if they are constrained. There's some constraint there. And yet, how they run their lives, if you look deeply, they're quite creative in their own ways. So you go in there with that recognition that you're not just going there to impose yourself. You are there to engage with them. And out of that engagement, you can see what works and what doesn't work in that specific environment. And so can I also add that when you, to the lady who's sitting there who was talking about engaging leadership and find that your idea is crazy. And so for me, it's like you have a goal, and you see that. And you want the other people to see this. But are you flexible enough for that goal to be enriched by your interactions, or are you stuck in it, that it must be this way? And so people might not hear you because you are so set in your way that you can't even listen properly or deeply to other people's voices. So whether you're engaging in the township or in the thing, is how you engage, how you enter into that dialogue, because it becomes a dialogue of women, and it's not just you coming with your ideas.
Guys, I don't know if this is just happening to me, but I am being moved in so many ways in this conversation. There's two things that stand out for me, Dr. Siswana, in what you've said. Even when we engage women in the rurals and the townships, do we engage with the posture to say we are coming to empower you? Or do we also engage with the possibility that we are here to learn from you? Because the way that you might already be engaging with energy actually has a lot to teach us as we sit in the urban areas. I'm also hearing you, and you didn't quote him, but I'm going to bring poetry in because Madame Noah did. My favorite poet is a guy called David White, and he says exactly what you've just said. And he says that a conversation is listened into existence before it is spoken. And sometimes, just sometimes, when we are so set on our ideas, the ability to hear input, feedback, refinement is just completely lost because we're not listening that conversation into existence. We just want to speak to our ideas. Speaking of speaking, when we are sitting with our CVs, Guguletu is saying, are we telling the story well? Are we capturing it? When you're sitting and you're making a decision about who to hire, and you're looking at the CVs of women versus the CVs of men, how well are we at articulating our value proposition? And beyond the CV, in the one-on-one interview, are we getting our story across as well as we could?
It's work in progress. I think like she was saying, we still tend to doubt ourselves and not really sell ourselves. Sometimes we shrink on overselling. Like I made an example. People saying that I don't have an experience of this environment, but that environment is bought but you've been in another environment that is governance.
Yes.
So
Yes.
basically, we're not tapping on the things that we know and leverage on what we're applying for. So it's very important as women that we recognize ourselves, we recognize our potential, and we sell ourselves. And that is still not happening. She's correct. It's not happening. We tend to still doubt ourselves. We tend to undersell ourselves. But we need to get to a point where we believe that, we have it. In the legal experience that we have, you have contributed. I'll make an example with myself. I got into a mining space
Yeah.
last year only. I got there and I was like, gosh, what is this place that I'm getting into?
Yeah.
And I was expected to deliver. I had to hit the ground. Someone also they believed in me. I hit the ground running, and I needed to also show that I'm capable. And by the time a year passed, people thought that I'd been around there for more than 20 years because I was already explaining the processes, explaining the environment. So it's also believing in our potential. And also, I'm not saying oversell, but because you know you.
Yeah.
You know yourself. The fact that you know yourself, you know that you are capable. Go for it. Tap into it. Tap into the unknown, and you will prove yourself. You will see yourself doing things that you never thought you would do. I mean, I'm at that point where people are like, can you please explain this? And I'm like, they believe me. But hey, it's possible. We can do it.
Yeah.
We just need to believe in ourselves. We need to sell our capabilities. And even if you don't believe in it, but just get into it. And you will see yourself proving yourself wrong, even though initially you were not thinking that way. So just get there. Get into it. Like I said again, even though you feel shaky, do it. It's an opportunity, and someone is believing in you, also believing in yourself. And do it and prove and see you achieving even more than you had thought you would achieve.
I appreciate that because you're reminding us of a teachable mindset. And if you believe that I'm teachable as a starting point, then there's nothing that is really out of reach. Madam Chair, as I come to you for a closing comment, if you could also just reflect on Snenhlanhla's question, where Snenhlanhla's like, I'm looking at public sector, I'm looking at private sector. It seems as if public sector has cracked this thing in terms of leveraging policy for change. What's taking the private sector so long? And how do we extrapolate some of those best practices from the public sector into the private sector? I'd love for you to please comment on that. And anything else, I saw you were taking notes, anything else that you put down on that page that you'd like to leave us with?
Okay. So maybe let me just start on the issue of, just personal responsibility and really just pushing yourself and believing in yourself. Preparation and putting your CV together in such a way that you can really be invited into the room. I think that is actually, am I not audible?
Yeah, we just want to make sure we don't lose you, if you don't mind, yeah.
So one thing that I've learned with the CVs, you think to yourself, okay, there must be hundreds of other people that are going to apply. So how are you going to make yours stand out? So normally what I do, or what I've done in the past, is I will do my CV, but then I will put a very powerful covering letter. That is a summary. It's a one-page. If my CV is 10 pages, at least there's one page that is going to talk about what is the value that I bring, or I believe I can bring to the position. What is also very important is that when you go to that interview, you go in there and you say, I want this job. You go in and you say, this job, I'm going to have it. You prepare. I used to, and I actually, still do that, the rehearsals. And I remember my first management position that I applied for, and I didn't know anything about training. And there was an opportunity. I applied for the position. And I had a mentor who had a training background. So he sat me down for an hour and we went through the interview. It was a mock interview. I did badly. It was so bad. And by the time I left his office, I thought, no, I'm not going to make it. And then I practiced over the weekend. I went to the interview. When I got to that interview, I was so confident. in the way that it went. I didn't care who else was there. And that's the other thing. Focus on you. And sometimes we want to know who's going to be there. Focus on you. Focus on you and what you bring. Don't think about who's going to be there. Oh, that one is better. Remember that star I talked about and the sun? And that's the thing. I'm the moon, and this is what I bring. I'm not trying to compete with the sun. And I think sometimes that's the mistake that we make. And coming to the issue of public sector, I think that because the public sector reports to government, and therefore that's where the policies are developed and driven from, I have found that in my experience, although I must admit that most of my experience is in the public sector, but I have found that that is a sector that really aggressively drives the policy implementation when it does happen, because you've got to account to government, right? So there is a drive there, and those are some of the lessons, I suppose, that one can take and say, you take the lessons from what the public sector is doing and you implant them in the private sector. But of course, then somebody also has to oversee the private sector and say, if you don't do A, B, and C, this is going to be the consequence. And I think that is how it can be monitored in the private sector to ensure that these developments happen. The other point I wanted to just latch on to is what Mahula spoke about, and that is how we are organized. I mean, in the energy sector, there's women in energy, women in energy and oil, or WUSA. There's many formations, even in the renewable energies. I think that we're operating as islands and not as organized as she said we are or not. And I think we need to find a way of building bridges, across, and talk more across the board as the energy sector, or women in the energy sector, so that we organize ourselves better. And that, as I was listening to some of the questions, I thought, okay, here's something that we could also do. It looks like there is a particular need in this area, for women who want to know a little bit more, let's say, about self-confidence, who want to know a little bit more about policies, who want to know a little bit more about this and that. I think that there is an opportunity, just looking now at the panel, to say, maybe let's go and reflect and say, what can we do as a panel? To make these things more accessible, and to also say, this is how these bridges could be built, around the board, across the board, so that there is better collaboration. I really think that we still operate as islands, to a very large extent. And maybe in those islands, maybe there's a lot that's going on, that is great and good. And that's why if you reflect again on the stats that I showed, you'll find that in the renewables space, there's a higher percentage. I mean, I'm just using, I don't know, I haven't done research, but I'm saying it could be a factor. So you learn from this grouping and say, okay, this is what they are doing, and this is what we can learn and transport it to another area. I think there's really a lot that we can do as women, and maybe we should take it on as a task and say, we'll sit and reflect. Fortunately, we are all in the same group of companies, so we can talk about the session and say, what can we do going forward, so that we can really have those practical and tangible actions. As I was saying, you don't have to boil the ocean. It's just a little drop from Usistu to here. It's another drop from Mahola, from myself. And then we fill up the glass, and then we've got the water to drink.
So there's a direct request that has come online, which I think speaks to your point, Chair. And the direct request is, can we consider an ongoing engagement platform between the annual sessions, please? And I think that's the request. And I think it's a great way of actually wrapping up the conversation to say that not only have we had an important conversation, but it's been a consequential conversation that has the potential to actually birth and lead to something else. The journey we're holding ourselves accountable to is clear. 22% in oil and gas, 32% in renewable energy, and yet a workforce that is made up of 47% of women. These are the numbers we've got to shift. These are the numbers that will be a marker of whether this has just been another talk shop or whether it's been a conversation of consequence. The request has been clear. We need more opportunities to engage. We want to come together more than just once a year. Can I please ask you to give my panelists a massive round of applause? I want to thank you kindly. I'm going to ask you to stay on stage. I know that the gentleman at the back would appreciate a group photo, so we're going to get ourselves information. Allow me the opportunity to say to our online audience, thank you very much for logging on and for staying with us throughout the stream. Remember that the hashtag continues even as we log off. Hashtag Women in Energy. To everybody who's in the physical space, thank you for making time to be a part of this conversation, for your questions, your comments, and for leaning into the conversation. For myself, Nozipho Tshabalala, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.